who says, "I've always wanted to know from Veer Sanghvi sir about how things were during the emergency in 1975 to 77. What are the short and long term effects, and how did it reflect on future politics?" I have a follow up question to this actually, but yeah, please. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a terrible time for Indian democracy until that time. It's happened again. The middle class was saying things like India needs a dictator, etc. We got a dictator. Mrs. Gandhi was during the emergency much worse even than anything we see today. They censored the press. They locked up the opposition. People were scared of criticizing the government on aeroplanes, trains, anywhere where they thought they could be overheard and perhaps locked up. How much of this fear was genuine? But I don't know. But there was certainly an atmosphere and a climate of fear. It was also the start of dynasty. Until then, sometimes politicians had children who followed in their feet, sometimes not. But in 1976, Mrs. Gandhi had a son called Sanjay, who'd failed in nearly everything he did, who was actually good at only one thing, which was fixing cars. He was like a motor mechanic sort of guy, who suddenly said to her, I'm going to take over. And he brought in various thugs in what was called the Youth Congress, still is, so it's fortunately a very different organization. And the entire government machinery went into overdrive to promote him as the crown prince. Ministers who'd been close to Mrs. Gandhi, like Inder Gujral, for years, were summarily dismissed or shouted at. And then you realize that India was going from being a democracy to becoming a sort of North Korean kind of country where you had the beloved leader and the beloved leader's son would take over, and then perhaps his son would take over. So the emergency, what you're asking, was really the darkest period in our democracy.
So my follow-up question, and after that we'll take a couple of questions from KV, which is that I was trying to Google this and I was trying to find out what the end result of this is, right? Like, so Japan changed its constitution that they won't be the aggressors in any conflict after World War II.
Yeah.
Now, the law to sort of the constitution still says that you can have an emergency even now, or has that changed at all?
That actual provision that allowed Mrs. Gandhi to impose the emergency when Janta came in 1977, they have amended. But remember that when Nehru and Co. took over in 1947, they saw India as this vast, disorganized country. There was a Communist Party of India that wanted to overthrow the government. There were the Hindu Mahasabha or its members had certainly been behind the killing of Mahatma Gandhi. There was the sense that democracy, which had not really succeeded in many countries in the region, was going to be a very, very rough ride. And they believed, therefore, the state should have vast repressive powers. Of course, they said, we're very nice chaps and we won't use the repressive powers. So if you look at the Indian constitution, about 45, 46 agencies can enter your house, can raid you. You can be arrested on a variety of charges. I think 36 agencies have the power to tap your telephone. So the Indian Constitution is a great document. It's a document that gives us a lot of freedom, but it's also the blueprint of a very authoritarian state. So it depends on who the person at the helm is. Mrs. Gandhi used it, and other governments have used it again to use things like the Enforcement Directorate, to use the CBI, to use pliable judges to lock people up without bail. So if a person who's not very scrupulous about things gets his hands on the or her hands on the constitutional machinery, India can be quite a repressive place.
Okay, Subham, if you're watching the show, please again like, share, and let's get to 10,000 likes. We're pretty much close to it. KV, please go ahead with your question.
Yeah, I actually had a follow-up question on the emergency thing, Veer, because the once more, and this topic is always contextual, but it has now come back into context with the entire censorship of OTT content and all that. So my question is about freedom of expression. A lot of us think that it's been curved upon in the last few years, but obviously, like you said, emergency was probably the lowest point in the history of freedom of expression. But freedom of expression in general has been a widely debated topic, not just in India, all over the world, about what is freedom of expression, how much is should be allowed and how much should be censored. And you as a journalist, of course, as a columnist, are in the thick of, like, are in the forefront of this debate of freedom of expression, etc. What is your take on today's and future and otherwise this entire debate of how much should be censored and how much should be allowed to be spoken about?
Okay, we're talking about two different things. On freedom of expression, my views are pretty much the same as everybody else's. There should be freedom of expression. There are exceptions: national security, defamation, crying fire in a crowded theater. Apart from that, I don't think there should be very many restrictions. Censorship is a little bit more difficult because the British introduced it and the government of India continued with it. We are now in an extraordinary situation where cinema is actually probably slightly less censored than it used to be in the past. And yet the government wants to censor everything. I was for 6 years on the television committee, a committee that looked at broadcast quality. And this was a committee that was set up by the last government in collaboration with the television industry. And the idea was that the industry itself would invite so-called eminent citizens like myself and other people, and we would decide internally what was right, what was wrong. The government wouldn't get involved. It worked brilliantly, and I thought it would be the sort of basis for all censorship or restriction or anything after that. In fact, this government has thrown that out of the window. It wants control on everything. It wants control on streaming services, saying that if cinema is subject to restrictions, why shouldn't streaming services? But frankly, television is not. Television has an internal body of the industry which works under the umbrella of the government. So it's possible to do the same thing with streaming services. And also, I mean, the name of the game has changed so much because of technology. Assume for the purpose of argument that somebody said such and such show on Amazon or Netflix, cut out the kissing scene or cut out the sex scene or whatever. We're all smart enough now to be able to bypass this and go and get Netflix USA, find a VPN, go beyond things. And with technology and the internet, to try and shut the stable door after the horse is bolted is counterproductive and silly.
Yeah, it's also I mean, how are you going to go through so much of content? It seems like a really stupid question to ask,
Yeah.
but it's actually a very, I mean, at what stage do you end? Does the internet end?
Yeah, but
Does it
always
also?
a
Yeah,
small guy somewhere who has a problem with something. Like the
yeah.
kissing scene recently in a temple in Suitable Boy has like obviously so has become a thing in Madhya Pradesh where they are like, we want the script to be approved by us before you start shooting in our state, in our temples. Like we talked about Netflix and Sacred Games had this small reference to Rajiv Gandhi, which pissed Congress off. So there is always one, you just need one person to notice one thing somewhere, and that's it. That will piss their own
Yeah,
party.
but we have a problem in India, which is that in no other civilized democracy is the fact that something gives offense a reason to ban it. I may be offended by the conversation I see on a news channel. I may be offended by what you guys are asking me. That's okay. If I don't like it, I change channels, I move on, which is the attitude everybody else in the world has taken. In India, we've enshrined this principle that if any guy anywhere is offended, the courts will entertain him, injunctions will be issued. People, in one case, Rupert Murdoch was asked to come to a small time court
Yeah.
to defend himself. So instead of, I mean, the government obviously has no interest in getting involved. Bad boy billionaires is another example. It's just the courts that entertain this. Now that the Supreme Court is taking this activist role and giving pronouncements on things like bail, I reckon the Supreme Court should also say that just because you're offended is no grounds for the rest of us to watch it, and judges should not be called in to do that. But it's not going to happen.
This, I mean, this ties into the other thing about the Supreme Court judges right now. I mean, the big thing which has been happening since starting with Prashant Bhushan was about like where they are like, you can't make fun of the Supreme Court,
Yeah.
or you can't this thing. What do you think about that? Because I remember reading a book ages back by, I still have it in my house, by Jon Stewart, which is called America the Book. And on the front cover, and again, I'm not saying that this is something that we should do. I'm just saying that this is what they did before people lose their minds. Is that they said featuring naked portraits of all the Supreme Court judges, and they actually had it. Now, again, the idea is that it's almost like the comedy there lies in the fact that you're misusing your this thing for comedy. Now, I'm not saying that we need to go to that extreme, but do you think do you think that we should respect them to the point that we do, or is there some gray area there?
Well, the law of contempt, which is used so readily by every judge in India who feels that he or she has been offended by something or has not been held in high enough esteem, exists in most countries of the world, but it's hardly ever used for the purposes we put it to, saying you can't make fun of judges. How dare you do this? I'm a judge. I have this kind of privilege. I think it's time the judiciary took a relaxed attitude to it. I think the Supreme Court is now going to prosecute a cartoonist for one stick figure cartoon, which the Attorney General has said is in contempt of court. I think that's ridiculous. Ultimately, what you create is not much more respect for the court. What you create is the situation where people feel the court is not a vehicle for encouraging free expression, but has become a means of suppressing it.